I invite you to stand and join me in the call to worship and then remain standing for the first hymn. I think that should all be up here. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another.
Just as I have loved you, you also shall love one another.
In worship, we testify to God's love shown perfectly in Christ.
We recommit ourselves to love one another as we do in faith.
O taste and see that the Lord is good.
Come, let us worship the Lord.
On this song, you had to sing loud.
Rain down your love on your people. Rain down your love on faithful and true is the word of our God. All of God's works are so worthy of trust. God's mercy falls on the just and the right. Full of God's love is the earth. Rain down, rain down, rain down your love. Rain down of God of life. We who live and find hope in our God, live in the kindness and joy of God's free. God will protect us from darkness and death. God will lead us to storm. Rain down, rain down, rain people, rain down, creation, we long for your truth. You are the water of life that we thirst. Grant us your love, peace touch our hearts. All of our hope lies in you. Rain down, rain down, rain down on your people. Rain down, rain down.
I think we've just been to church. Good morning again. My name is Charlie Ferguson. I've been attending this church since I first met and started dating this wonderful lady here in 1983. So you had 41 years. Never thought I'd be at one church that long. I'd like to invite the children, if there are any at this point, to go back to the back and get ready for the children's story. As we gather today, we come to worship together, bringing with us the joys and concerns of the past week. The history we are all living today has been and continues to be a challenging time for many of us. There's significant uncertainty and angst in our communities. There's a sense of anger and confusion and hopelessness. But at the same time, I think there's a growing momentum of energy that I think and I hope may lead to some positive changes in the future. As many of you know, I'm a professor at the University of Colorado, Denver in the Integrative Biology Department. And one of the true reasons I truly love teaching, even though I retired in 2019, is the student population on this campus. In all three of the classes I'm teaching this semester, the overwhelming majority of my students are either immigrants from all corners of the globe, and many of them are first-generation students from Hispanic and Southeast Asian, Middle Eastern, Eastern Europe, African, Indian subcontinent. I've been listening lately to the conversations they have before and after class. They're scared. There's no doubt about that. They're confused, and they're scared for their extended families. But to my surprise, I'm also hearing a sense of things might be okay from them. They are demonstrating tenacity that comes from having already lived difficult lives in very difficult political times, that gives them a sense of confidence and, dare I say, a hope that all will be well eventually. I truly wish I shared their optimism, but it does my heart so much good to hear them and to be able to walk and talk with them. Many of us picked star words at the beginning of Epiphany. Mine was amazement. I've had to look at that card a lot lately. When I do, I realize that I'm really amazed at the world we live in, a world that in spite of current events is still very beautiful and a very amazing place to be, and that it gives me great joy when I take the time to see and listen to its message. I'm amazed at the resilience of many of the people in my life who are determined to make something of this life in spite of the difficulties they face. I'm amazed at how lucky I am to have a wonderful wife and daughters who put up with my insanity on a daily basis and still have time every day to say, I love you. And I'm amazed to be part of a spiritual community like this that has as its history 500 years of saints who lived their faith, who did not let the tough times determine who they were or what they would accomplish. I'm amazed at all of you here today who worked so hard to continue that legacy, the legacy of helping those in need through our own personal actions, as well as the myriad of programs that exist today as part of this thing we call the Mennonite Church. And we do it because it's the right thing to do and because we believe in the teachings of Jesus. So as we worship today, may we all be amazed at what we are doing, of who we are interacting with, of who we are. May we leave here and take that amazement into the world. May it help us look for, as I tell my students on a regular basis, the beauty in the world. For sure, it's a lot tougher to find today, but there is beauty and amazement out there. We just have to look for it, support each other in that search, and have a faith that allows us to appreciate it and pay it forward when we can.
Are you guys good? Medium? Bad? Too tired still? That's all right. I get that. All right. So we have Jude and his bunny. Does your bunny have a name? Yeah, what's your bunny's name? Fluffy? I love it. He's very cute. And we have Jesus and Gabriela, Julia, Avery, Kiki, and Felix. Hi, it's good to see you guys. All right. So today our story is about Jesus washing his disciples' feet. So here's Jesus, and he's washing people's feet. Does anybody know why people might need their feet washed? Yeah. So back in the old days, they didn't have cars and people would walk a lot. Do you guys see this road? What does it look like it's made out of? Yeah, mud. It's muddy and dirty, isn't it? And what's this guy got on his feet? What's he wearing on his feet? He's wearing sandals, yes. Entonces las carreras, la gente tenía que caminar. Y había mucho lodo y tierra y todo, y estaban llevando como sandalias y todo, entonces sus pies estaban bien sucios. So people's feet would get really dirty with these dirt roads, and they're walking, and your feet would get kind of gross. And so when they would get to a house, a servant would wash their feet. Entonces, como una empleada o alguien estaba lavando los pies de las personas porque cuando entraron a la casa estaban bien sucios sus pies. So, she's like, qué asco, that's gross. It was, so that you didn't want to come in with your dirty, dirty feet. So people would wash them so that your feet were clean. But usually it was a servant who washed other people's feet. Okay, usualmente fue como un serviente, una empleada que estaba lavando los pies. But this time, Jesus is washing the feet of his disciples. Okay. Entonces Jesús está haciéndolo para sus amigos. And that is showing us that he was this great teacher, but he was also helping other people and working with them. Entonces él estaba como su maestro, pero también estaba trabajando con ellos, cuidando para otros como ellos. So he was teaching them. He said, take this lesson from me. Treat other people well and help others always. And so that's what he did with his disciples. He washed their feet to show that he was one of them, that he was taking care of them, and he wanted them to take care of other people. Entonces él estaba lavando sus pies para mostrar que él fue uno de ellos, que él estaba ayudando a ellos y él quería que ellos estaban trabajando con otros también, ayudando a otros, siendo parte de la comunidad. That's Jesus, es Jesús lavando los pies. Es el agua. Okay, this is the water, the basin that they used. Es donde pusieron el agua para lavar los pies. So I want you guys, do you remember who was here last week for Sunday school? ¿Quién estaba aquí el último domingo? Did you guys make bags full of food and some snacks and chapstick and Kleenex? Yeah, we made bags to help people who might need like a snack, maybe people who don't have a home, right? And so we made bags to help other people. And that's one of Jesus's lessons, to help take care of other people. And that was a really nice thing that you guys did last week. La última semana hicimos bolsas con cosas para ayudar a la gente que necesitaba como algo para comer, Kleenex y cosas, y estábamos dando esas cosas a personas que no tenían hogar. So that was very nice. So let's think this week about how we can be like Jesus and wash the feet of others, help other people. Vamos a pensar esta semana en cómo podemos ayudar a los otros como Jesús hizo. Okay. All right. If you want to go down to the nursery, you can go down there. We have Your grandma's down there, and we have Miss Stephanie helping, okay? All right, I'll see you guys in a little bit. Okay. Thank you.
You'll all join me in prayer. Spirit of understanding, we are humbled when we contemplate the moment that you washed the feet of Judas. We cannot understand how and why you chose to be a servant to him, and yet we are thankful. We are thankful that you seek to serve even we who betray your trust and turn from you. Forgive us, restore us, teach us how best to serve each other. Amen.
We'll sing the last three verses after the meditation. In case there's any confusion, we're all doing this all together.
Will you let me be your servant? Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too. We are pilgrims on a journey. We are travelers on the road. We are here to help each other walk the path and bear the load. I will hold the Christ light for you. My time of your fear. I will hold my hand out to you. Speak the peace I long to hear.
Scripture reading this morning is from the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 1 through 17. Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand. Peter said to him, You will never wash my feet. Jesus answered, Unless I wash you, you have no share with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus then said to him, One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you. For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, Not all of you are clean. After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them.
Morning, everyone. Since I don't preach too often, and since Anabaptism only turns 500 once, thus the title of my message today, I thought, why not just take the opportunity to share a few thoughts I've had, or put down a few thoughts and share them on this anniversary and what they mean today for us. I've had a bit of a cold. I totally lost my voice on Thursday, so hopefully I make it all the way through here. También sé que no hay intérprete hoy, así que voy a dar algunas traducciones durante el mensaje. Básicamente voy a hablar de 4 temas del anabautismo, el bautismo, cristocentrismo, la comunidad y construcción de paz, y cada rato voy a dar un resumen de eso. Así que we don't have a translator today, so I'm going to do a couple little parts in Spanish. Most of us know the story by now. On January 21st, 1525, at a prayer meeting of dissenters, George Blaurock gets up and asks Conrad Grebel to baptize him. He subsequently baptized the rest of the attendees of the gathering. This action led to many of them to be put in jail, and eventually for some of them to be killed by the state. I chose the verse of Jesus washing the disciples' feet today to go along with thinking about the early Anabaptists, because I think there's a bit of a synchrony between these two moments. In baptizing themselves, the first Anabaptists rejected the powerful coupling of church and state in their time. Adult baptism turned out to be kind of an intolerable threat to the state, and the Anabaptists, through reading the Bible, put forth this idea that Christians should actually choose this path rather than it being imposed from above, challenging the notion of Christendom, which had been around since Constantine had made Christianity the official religion of Rome. Jesus, of course, was also a threat to the authorities, rejected violence even as he was put to death, and radically upended notions of power and kingship by washing the disciples' feet. So first, I want to talk a little bit about baptism today. Primero voy a hablar un poquito sobre lo que es ser bautizado hoy y el significado hoy. Voy a decir que en el tiempo en que los anabautistas primeros empezaron a bautizar como adultos, eso era un desafío a las autoridades porque desafiaron el Estado y Iglesia siendo juntos. Pero ahora creo que si hay algo radical de ser bautizado como adulto, es más que estamos aceptando límites a nosotros mismos, de seguir a una persona, seguir y ser a veces corregidos por nuestras comunidades. So today I'm challenged to ask the question myself, does baptism or believers' baptism, so scandalous in its time, have anything to say in our culture today? In a sense, believers' baptism is about choice. And today we live in a society filled with choice. Every time I'm at the grocery store, I'm challenged to choose between 10 peanut butters. I'm challenged to choose between 10 types of tortilla chips, and there's hundreds of cars. Choice and the ability, the freedom to choose, more importantly, to choose who we are, who we want to believe, what we want to believe is in many ways core to who we are in this country. And Anabaptists might claim some credit for that. But today, if there's a radical element about believers' baptism, I think oddly, it's not about the freedom to choose, but rather making a choice to accept some limits and accept some direction. When we choose to get baptized, we're essentially saying we're choosing to follow Jesus, and that we're choosing to accept our community and listen to the community around us. We are placing moral limits and expectations on ourselves. Obviously, for this reason, sometimes religious communities can be too constraining. They can be too suppressing and limiting. And so sometimes we put more of the emphasis on the joy and freedom we find in following Christ. But I actually noticed today that this idea of limits sort of in the secular world is sort of being caught up to. I recently read the book, a bestseller called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, which is essentially about the necessity of accepting limits. He basically argues that we all die one day, and so our very nature is that we're limited. We have to accept this as a limit, and that once we do that, we're actually more free in our lifetime, not with this pressure to do everything and be everything. And he comes out of this kind of high-pressured, white-collar office worker sort of world where people sense this pressure of having to rise to the next step, always, zero out your email, do all your responsibilities, all these things. He's saying accepting the limit that you won't ever actually find some system that gets you to this pinnacle is actually very freeing. And so I could recommend the podcast, What the Amish Can Teach Us, by a professor from Virginia, I think. And one of the interesting things there is that one of the things they talk about is limits, that they obviously more limited in those societies, but that they also do find a lot of freedom in that as well. Next, I want to talk a little bit about Jesus-centeredness. Ahora quiero hablar un poquito sobre la idea de cristocentrismo, de poner Jesús en el centro, y eso es algo que los primeros anabautistas obviamente hicieron. En ese tiempo, no todos pudieron leer la Biblia, pero ellos en su leer de la Biblia dijeron que, bueno, tenemos que poner más énfasis en lo que hizo y dijo Jesús, y que la iglesia en este momento no estaba haciendo eso. Y voy a hablar un poquito sobre el impacto que eso debe tener en nuestras vidas, de realmente no solo aceptar a Cristo, pero de actuar y seguir su camino en nuestras acciones también. So I'd like to speak a little bit about Jesus-centeredness. I might combine a couple ideas here, but the Anabaptists, those first Anabaptists, in their reading of the Bible, they realized that they didn't think that the church around them was really putting a lot of emphasis in what Jesus said. It might seem weird to think of this as a radical thing, but in their time, it was certainly true that the words of Jesus was sort of marginalized. And I've come to know several what you might call neo-Anabaptists, people who've come to an Anabaptist sort of understanding, but that aren't part of an Anabaptist denomination. And this is one of the things they say, is that Anabaptists actually do put Jesus at the center. They put extra weight on the Gospels, and that they would say in places where they came from, Jesus is often marginalized, which is a weird thing to say, but this belief for us now and for early Anabaptists of following Jesus isn't just an intellectual exercise, though, but one that implicates our hands and feet, our lives. And here's where Mennonites are often known as doers, people who are quick to help in a disaster. Anabaptists believe that when one chooses to believe and be baptized in the church, it should have an attendant change in our how we act and how we live. And one of my favorite an old book about Anabaptists by Harold S. Bender called The Anabaptist Vision. If some of you maybe read that a while ago, there's a fun section where, to prove this point, that Anabaptists believed the Anabaptist word changed and what they would say rebirthed at that time through their baptism, is that he quotes several people who were persecuting Anabaptists at that time, people who were actually trying to kill Anabaptists, and he quotes many of them talking about how well these Anabaptists lived their lives. And one person, Bollinger, who was again persecuting Anabaptists, says that after baptism, they henceforth lead their lives under a semblance of quite spiritual conduct. They denounce covetousness, pride, profanity, the lewd conversation and immorality of the world, drinking and gluttony. In short, their hypocrisy is great and manifold. So that's kind of funny. And so that's a great thing. I love that little book. It's old, now, but it's good. So again, I have the challenge of saying what just putting Jesus at the center mean for us today. While early Anabaptists talked about rebirth, I think for us, what we talk more about is the idea of service. And this is part of why the verse I chose today of Jesus washing the disciples' feet is so important to me. I grew up with this being a strong part of my upbringing in First Mennonite, Reedley, California. Service day as part of youth group. My dad worked for MCC and was something he sort of ingrained in us. And so this verse of Jesus getting on his knees and washing the disciples' feet, it's still fresh to me. It still busts up all these conceptions that we still have today of power and leadership and what that means. Just, imagine Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos washing one of their workers' cars or something like that. We just, it's kind of impossible to imagine. And so this idea of service, I think it's alive in this church. And as I was writing this, I was thinking of Doug Reed. I was thinking of the time that Doug, at the drop of a hat, came and helped me move a couch. I was remembering I was in the office here one day in the middle of winter, and there was like a foot of ice that had built up on the street along here. And he was out there with a sledgehammer with Paul as well, just out there trying to break up this ice. And I was just on my computer, Finally, I went out there and helped. I remember Doug with some sort of heavy tool, and this is after he started chemo, smoothing out parts of the cement. And the neat thing, of course, we love and miss Doug. But the neat thing is that he always did it with a smile, and that's one of the amazing things about service, is that a lot of times it's pretty fun too. There is a decline in like MCC and other service organizations of numbers of youth that want to go do service programs. But we've seen, at least in MCC, that positions, we still fill them, because in the global church, people are feeling this call and wanting to take on positions. So more and more service positions at MCC are filled by Congolese, Bolivians, Guatemalans, Colombians, and that's a really neat thing. One example I read about recently, there was a pastor in Mexico, Victor Leon, who started a program to help migrants on their journey. And there was a woman who stayed with them for a while she was waiting for her visa. And she helped with the program. She actually got her visa, and then she decided, I actually want to stay in Juarez and continue serving with this program. And she said, I have the quote here. She said, from the service, something changed when I started serving here. I felt with peace within myself. I feel good here. Maybe this is okay, she said. So just that aspect of joy and what service can bring to us. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about community. Voy a hablar un poquito sobre lo que es la comunidad y lo que es leer la Biblia juntos. Los primeros anabautistas tuvieron la idea de que debemos interpretar la Biblia juntos. Y eso era bien radical en su momento y hasta hoy creo. Pero voy a hablar un poco sobre como de leer e interpretar la Biblia juntos nos lleve a tener a la importancia de la comunidad y cómo lo vivimos hoy, de ayudarnos no solo entre nosotros, pero también personas en otros lugares. Y creo que eso es bien importante de que debemos seguir haciendo eso como comunidad. So the word I have here is actually, I'm going to talk about first, is community hermeneutics, which is the idea that together we can interpret the Bible. So I don't know if any of you have seen or read much about the New Anabaptist Bible. It's not a new translation, but I've taken a look at it, and the really cool thing is that it includes contextual notes from experts, but also from early Anabaptists and from community groups around the world. I think a few hundred groups that study the Bible together. Just kind of regular Joes who sent in their thoughts, and then the editors decided what to put sort of in the side. So that's a really neat thing. It goes directly back to those first Anabaptists who said, we're not just going to listen to the state-sponsored experts up there, but we're going to ourselves interpret the Bible. And it was from that root that came adult baptism and many other things that were seen as radical at that time. So yeah, you might even say that's the most radical part of what they were doing. And one advantage of community hermeneutics, as my friend Alan Ebb Weaver, who also works at MCC, has published a few books, and I was listening to him talk about this recently. He said that while of course our interpretations can always get somewhat calcified, this idea that we can interpret together the Bible means that there's always, he says, a chance of a spark of renewal. And I think that's a really neat way to put it. And I think that coming out of this idea that we should read the Bible together and interpret the Bible together comes simply the idea of community, of supporting one another. And I'm sure that the two are related. We see this very strongly in, most distinctively in like the Amish and Old Colony Mennonite communities, but I think we practice it pretty well ourselves well. So where do I see it today? To me, one example that comes to me is from my church growing up. I have a friend in Kansas who we don't see each other very often, but we grew up together in church. And he knows that if they're driving through Denver, they've got a place to stay with us, because our church upbringing together just brought us up to support each other, I think. And there's a trust there from growing up together. I see that it means that we bring meals and send cards and offer prayers of support and practical ways of support in all kinds of situations for each other, from death and illness, even to moving. My friend Andrew Wright says, helping each other move is our urban Mennonite equivalent of Amish barn raising. You want to think about it that way. That's kind of fun. It means sharing time after service. It means circle processes. It means potlucks. It means giving really generously for youth trips. Thank you all again. It means church is a place for us to share our talents and grow. It's also a place where we are needed. Church isn't just a place where we get filled spiritually and have good friends, but a place where we are needed. Even just being here on Sunday is something the rest of us need. All of us here are wanted and needed. Isn't having a place where we're needed important? We can maybe experience this at work and in our families, but I think it's nice to know that there's a place where you're wanted, not because of some skill you have or some responsibility or whatever else, but simply due to the recognition that you're a child of God as well. So when I read the news today about, say, the epidemic of loneliness, of young men being radicalized on their phones, finding meaning and friendship in toxic online communities, I see our Anabaptist emphasis on community that isn't just about us, but extended outward as well as a beautiful thing that we still offer the world. Finally, I want to just talk a little bit about peacemaking. Finalmente voy a hablar un poco sobre la construcción de paz. Y como eso todavía en este mundo de mucha violencia sigue siendo re importante. Voy a mencionar una persona de Chadeo en África, quien conocí que ha hecho paz entre personas de diferentes religiones y otros aspectos o maneras en que los anabaptistas hoy hemos seguido esta tradición de construyendo paz. Many of us probably grew up with nonviolence and peace essential to what it means to be Mennonite. Mennonites are one of the historical peace churches. And I remember as a kid being put the question of, well, what would you say if you were put in front of a draft board? Some of you here may have faced that question in reality. Our peace witness is an important thing that Anabaptists have continued to bring to the world. And while we have in many ways transitioned from an ethic of nonviolence to an emphasis on active peace building, I do wonder, what does it mean for us today in the United States, particularly where we, have the largest military in the world? How do we say we're peace builders when we're protected by military force of such size? But while you could argue that Mennonites have too easily made peace with that, I appreciate our humble action to do what we can in the U.S. to build peace. Mennonites have been key in restorative justice movement. We have protested wars and U.S. arms sales. MCC in our Washington office, we have advocated for peace, and Mennonite Action has called many of us to mobilize for peace. This peace witness continues to be an important deviation from our dominant culture. Our culture celebrates violence in so many ways, sometimes we barely even notice. The myth of redemptive violence is in every action movie and television show. And while here in the United States, our peace witness is small compared to the overwhelming culture that celebrates violence, it's still important. And around the world, it does make a tangible difference. So I want to highlight for you a couple stories from around the world. First, I shared briefly a few months ago in sharing time about Mulanda Jimmy Juma, who's a Congolese person who experienced war as a child, and through, I think, an MCC conference or training, started a journey that has made him a real big time, peace builder there in Africa. And he's working in, I forget now, not in Congo anymore, but recently he was called in to a situation where violence was simmering in a region. And he was the one who helped with dialogue to bring peace to that situation. So it's still having that impact. And I was in Pennsylvania in November, and I got to meet a man named Victor Dogos. And he is a pastor in Chad. And I got to hear him speak, and he talked about him and his organization as an MCC partner had worked, and he'd been working at this for decades, actually, bringing together Muslim and Christian leaders. And he says now with confidence through all of these years of dialogue that there could still be war within Chad, but he is confident it won't be a religious war, in large part because of work him and others have done. So this peace witness is still bringing something important to the world. And that finally is what I think we must continue to do. Like Dogos and so many before him, at 500 years of Anabaptism, we must continue to live it. We must seek and create vibrant community in a culture of loneliness and individualism. We must seek consensus and learning together in a culture celebrating power and domination. And we must put Jesus at the center amidst a culture of self-centeredness. That's my encouragement for us today. May it be so. Amen.
I believe when When we sing to God in heaven, we shall find such harmony. For all we've known together of Christ and agony. Will you let me be your servant? Let me be as Christ to you. With authority of grace, to let you be my servant true.
Thank you, Jordan. We have a number of announcements this morning. I got to look at these because I don't know what the order is now. So as always, our offering, we have a couple of different options for the offering. You can use the QR code that's up here, or I think it's on the back of our bulletin. We also have an offering box in the back in the foyer for people who would like to donate that way. Today, we have donuts and coffee in the community center after church. There's an usher meeting for those of you that are a part of that at 11 o'clock in the office back here. And there is children's Sunday school today, so we can do that. Tuesday, the 11th, there's Bible study at 11 o'clock. I'm not sure the location on that. Anne's looking at the book of Acts. On Thursday, the 13th, at 1 p.m., the Care Partner Support Group, Nikki Candle Lind will be the guest presenter for that one. And there's also a leadership board meeting at 6 o'clock. On Saturday, this coming Saturday, you all should have had an insert in your bulletin on the Life and Faith Forum, Learning to Hope in the Dark. That is going to be from 9:30 to 2:30. The schedule is on here. We would encourage as many people as possible to come to that. And then next Sunday, the adult education topic will be on immigration in that First Mennonite Church. And I think there were a couple other people that had a couple things.
Good morning. I'm Rachel Barnes. Lori Oswald and I have started a, what are we calling it? An MYF committee. And we're just sort of brainstorming ideas for MYF and starting to plan things together. So if you would be interested on being on this committee, you could meet with us one time. You could plan to be with us on an ongoing manner, whatever you're willing to give. We'd love to have you. Because we had decided to, we ended up not hiring someone to be kind of that community builder person. We're going to have this committee. I will be the sponsor. Jordan is our teacher. And so we're looking for help from the community to kind of take on that role of community builder together as a team. So we would love to have you join us. I thought I was going to make a paper sign up and I totally forgot to do that. Surprise, surprise. So, but if you'd like to talk to me about it, I'd love to have you join us. Thank you.
Angie, did you have a?
Can you hear me? Whoops, no, yes, yeah. Angie Nostiger, so I'll just speak back here, it's okay. Two things. One thing is a PSA. We have little sanitizer bottles, as you know, and we are in that season of flu, COVID, norovirus, whatever. So take an opportunity to use those just so we can keep everybody protected. Another one is Paul Johnson came up with a wonderful title of Quiltapalooza. So what that means is a couple weeks ago, I had some folks come help me down in the conference room to measure and price fabric that we're going to sell at the MCC sale in October. So we need to do a little bit more work on that. So that'll be this Tuesday, starting at 9 o'clock down in the conference room. So if you'd like to join the Quiltapalooza, come join us. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other announcements that we missed that we need to make?
you go where you don't know? I'd never be the same. Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known? Will you let my life be known in you and you in me? Will you leave yourself behind if I but call your name? Will you care for cruel and never be the same? Will you risk the loss to stay? Should your life attract or scare? Will you let me answer prayer in you and you in me? Will you let the blind see if I but call your name? Will you set the prisoners free and never be the same? Will you kiss the leper clean and do such as this unseen? And let me do what I need in you and you in me. Will you love the you are if I might call your name? Will you quell the fear inside and never be the same? Will you use the faith you brought to reshape the world around? To my sight and touch and sound in you and you in me. Christ, your summons echoes through you, but call my name. Let me turn and follow you and never be the same. In your company I'll go, where your love and footsteps show. The sound and never flow in you and you in me.
All right. Thank you, Emily. Now's the time where we say goodbye to the live stream folks. You know, the pastors usually do this with such grace, so go in peace. Have a wonderful weekend. We're glad hope you have experienced some of the joy and community here with us today.